Well, today on this special day, we are honoring the men and women who served our country, giving thanks to their service. But as we found out, pride for our country flies high for those who weren't born in the U.S. And Eileen is here to explain more. Good morning, Eileen.
Good morning,
again.
Bridget. Yes, thank you. You know, this story is actually very close to me, and I'll explain that in a little bit. But, you know, growing up, I learned about the Philippine Scouts from my parents. The Scouts were formed right after the Spanish-American War to help increase military presence in the islands. And they were part of the regular U.S. Army. Today, only a few are still alive, and very few know about their story.
When the Japanese military invaded, the Philippine Scouts demonstrated extreme valor. You hardly hear about the atrocity or what they went through in the Pacific, and it needs to hopefully not ever die. The Japanese took both the Filipino and American soldiers as prisoners and forced them on what became known as the Bataan Corregidor Death March.
Words from more than a half a century ago telling the story of a group of brave soldiers from the Philippines.
I never did think I would live this long to survive it.
Alfredo Quijano was 17 years old when he enlisted in the Philippine Scouts and followed his father's advice, who was also a scout.
Schooling is very hard right now. I prefer that you join the service and go to school at night.
April 1942, so that's why we surrendered.
We were in concentration camps, have no food. People were dying by hundreds every day, about 400 every day.
Just as his father and grandfather before him were scouts, young Benjamin Austria followed in their footsteps.
Filipino Batak, who trained me as a scout, to be a good scout, Batak.
This guy right here trained you to be a good scout. But the medic and a dozen fellow scouts were also captured.
If you want to surrender, go ahead. If you want to escape, go ahead. It's up to you. So we decided to escape. $400 per head to escape. But we don't have that money. So I have my watch and 2 more watches. We were told to lay low about the native because if they are caught, they'll be caught and they'll be killed.
In some ways, both men were captives, one a prisoner of war, the other a prisoner in his own land.
During their time, they had no unearthly idea when they were going to leave or when the war was going to be over. We can't help it. There's no sanitation, no nothing. People were dying of dysentery, beriberi, and influenza.
3 years as a POW, Alfredo found ways to stay alive.
His father sneaked into camp the boiled bark of the cinchona tree for temporary relief for malaria victims.
I'm 92 now. Finding ways to survive in those days is very, very hard.
He had to be pretty tough individual, you know, spiritually and physically to withstand what he went through.
The Death March survivor was reduced to skin and bones by the time the war was finally over.
That's only God willing. That's only the blessing of God that have allowed me to survive this.
Both Alfredo and Benjamin were awarded medals, honored with silver and bronze stars, plus a Purple Heart.
The first thing that came to my mind was that how did the Americans feel about the Filipinos? I think they treated them with a lot of respect.
Like most Philippine Scouts, they left their country to continue their service to the U.S. Army.
After Japan's defeat in 1945, a U.S. judge visited military camps in the Philippines to grant immediate U.S. citizenship to any Philippine Scouts willing to join as a regular member of the U.S. military.
And brought their families to Texas to begin a new life in their new home.
That's another chapter in human history that you'll never see again.
So you just need to preserve it. I mean, that's why, I'll always have those pictures of forgotten heroes right there of the Filipino Scouts and what they did to help the Americans during World War II.
And aside from Mr. Quijano and Mr. Austria, one more scout is living here in San Antonio, Mr. Benjamin Tubig. He was also captured during the war but escaped the death march, coincidentally with Mr. Austria. There are reasons why this story is so close to me. I have uncles from both sides of my family who were scouts, 2 from my mom's side and 2 more from my dad's family. In fact, they were prisoners of war. If you'd like to learn more about the Philippine Scouts, visit the Fort Sam Houston Museum, read books written by retired Colonel John Olson, who was a POW and is also a San Antonian. Plus, you can learn about it online, Philippine-Scouts.org.
Eileen, what an amazing story. And I would imagine hearing the stories as a little girl, this is a mark in your career to be able to share this story with the people of San Antonio.
Yes, yes.
Right?
You know, when I heard that we still have, you know, because it's a generation that's fading away so quickly. And so when I heard that we have still 3 who are surviving, I mean, I just had to jump at the chance of telling their story because not a whole lot of people know who they are.
Right.
Not unless you grew up in the Philippines or you're of Filipino descent. You'll hear about them, but we rarely ever hear about some of the things